All right, here we are. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome, welcome to the Juice this morning, and thank you guys for taking an hour of your time this morning to be on the panel and talk and kind of share your background, your experience with us. What I'd like to do is we'll introduce the panelists and we'll kind of talk about the topic a little bit, and then kind of be an interactive discussion. For anyone who's watching, if you have questions or comments, please feel free to put them out there, and we'll address them. The panelists will address them. This morning we're talking about setting goals, and I think what most of us have goals in our lives, right? We have goals when it comes to personal things, when it comes to business, but I think for entrepreneurs, hi Deavondre. When it comes to being an entrepreneur and running your own business, there's a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of things going on in order to put everything in place. And to have goals is a great thing, but to approach them in a way that's maybe more methodical and organized is probably a very smart way to go about things. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about this morning, is how do each of you approach goal setting? What does that mean? What's a short-term goal? What's a long-term goal? How do you get there? And then how do you measure your success of achieving those goals? Because it's one thing to set the goal, but then it's another thing to get there. And what happens if you don't? Is that a bad thing? Or so lots we can discuss. So this morning, I'm going to introduce the panelists. We have Aleka Thrash with A.C.T PhotoMedia. Paul Pearson is with SpringGR. Mario Rodriguez is with Soldadera Coffee. And Deavondre Jones is with DanceSpire. So thank you guys for being here. What we'll do is we'll just go around and have each one of you give us a little bit of background of yourself, what you do, and then we can kind of launch into some of the discussion points around goal setting, because I want each one of you to, I think having talked to all of you, I think what's really interesting is how everybody approaches goal setting in their own way. And there's no right way to do it, but if you're not doing it as an entrepreneur, as a practice, you probably should be. So why don't we start with Aleka? Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I definitely appreciate being here with the panelists and Start Garden, so thank you for that. But yes, my name is Aleka C. Thrash. I'm the principal with A.C.T PhotoMedia. It is a photography and multimedia company, so we have shifted from lifestyle photography a little bit to doing more B2B. So we've been doing a lot of product shoots for companies, headshots for corporate. So still definitely offering family photography, but kind of shifted a little bit with the pandemic to offering more B2B services. I've been a photographer for 20 years this year. It's crazy. 20-year high school reunion, 20-year celebration of starting my business. I also own a head wrap company, Wraps by A.C.T. And I have a lifestyle blog that I talk about how I have overcome and continue to work through depression and severe sadness. So I am super busy and excited to share my experience.
Great, thank you. And you know what? I realized I didn't introduce myself. So I'm Laurie with Start Garden, and I didn't introduce Belinda. And Belinda's with Start Garden as well. She is here to make sure we run smoothly this morning. So thanks, Belinda.
Of course.
Okay, Paul, go ahead.
Thanks, Laurie, for having me on today. I'm really excited. I have a couple things to share, but I'm really excited to learn from the other panelists here, because I've had a chance to speak with all of them and got to know a couple pretty well over the last few years. And I know that they've got a lot to offer. So really excited to hear what everybody else is going to say today. So again, Paul Pearson, I work for SpringGR as an entrepreneur support specialist. SpringGR is a business training and coaching program here in Grand Rapids. And we have a 12-week business training course that all participants initially go through. And then we have got a whole bunch of resources, opportunities, mentors, coaches, and further learning opportunities for anybody that's gone through our 12-week course. And so in my role at SpringGR, I do a lot with business mentors and the opportunities for continued learning and growth as an entrepreneur after that 12-week course.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Mario.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Laurie, for having me. So my name is Mario Rodriguez-Garcia. So I'm a co-founder and CEO of Soldadera Coffee. It's a beverage company. We operate in West Michigan and ship all over the United States. My background is actually in mechanical engineering, so it's a little bit different, but my passion and love is coffee. So
Great.
nice
Thanks.
to meet everybody.
Deavondre.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. I'm excited to be here as well. Thank you for inviting me. So a little bit about myself. I am the founder of DanceSpire. We are a company, a dance brand that focuses on event production. Especially with the pandemic, we're moving towards a tech-first, artist-based company where we're just simply trying to develop outlets and sustainable communities for dancers. I also split my time with DanceSpire Agency, which is a marketing digital agency, which is focused on developing more knowledge around tech for artists and seasoned professionals. So.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I guess sort of the first thing I'd love to touch on, and that would be to have each of you touch on, is how do you go about actually setting your goals? Do you have long-term, short-term, and how do you distinguish those, and then how do you personally sit down and plan those out? Anybody can start.
I'll start. I'll start simply because I love goal setting. I'm a nerd. My friends know that, like, when this conversation comes on, that I'm about to, like, my eyes are going to light up. I love goal setting, but I will also say that I don't think that I'm bringing anything necessarily new. I'm a big fan of Jim Rohn. He's a personal development, very big into personal selling. And I love some of his philosophies around goal setting. One of his biggest philosophies around goal setting is that when you're setting goals, the importance of setting goals is not about what you're going to get, it's about who you're going to become in the process. So very, very quick example is when you are a person who has a certain habits and you win the lotto and you have $1 million, more than likely that money is going to come back down to wherever your habits are, right? So how we perform and how we show up is generally based on our habits, right? And so for me, goal setting is very little about the $1 million or the plane or whatever the item is more so about what habits do I need to get there? And so I'll set the goal for the jet or for the $1 million or whatever. But in my planning to strategically get to that goal, I have to think about the habits. So that's kind of how I approach goal setting. I'll set something out where I think what's almost impossible, right? It's like a little hint of impossible, right? With majority realistic. It has to be realistic. And so I'll set that goal. And then from there, it's less about what this goal is and more about who do I need to become in the process to have this goal come to me, right? And that's a big thing of how I set my goals when it comes to business, when it comes to personal. I'll share another thing. One of the biggest goals right now with my business is that we're looking to do an international flagship over in China. So that's one big one. And then secondly, we're looking to pivot into a tech company. So those are like some really huge goals that I've set in the last year. And within that, it's less about the thing and it's more about, okay, what habits do we need to develop? What systems and processes do we need to develop to become this goal and not have this goal, if that makes sense? And so that's kind of how I do my planning. That's how I do my goal setting. Hopefully that wasn't as exciting as what you expected.
No, that's fine. I think that, whatever process, right? So it's, you put something out here and then you've got to get there. So there's the goal, and then maybe there's the tasks that it takes to achieve it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I like to jump in on that. For me, it's always been a really difficult task just setting goals. I mean, we're talking from college to startup to even in the corporate world. There's so many formats, there's so many ways of doing it. And if for the people who are watching this and they don't really know what their habits are, or they're like, well, I have to change my habits. It's a struggle, but it's doable once you find the thing that you have to do, the thing that works for you. for me, after using several different types of softwares, I noticed that I'm like, all right, well, as a more of an analytical mind, I like to set goals based on projects and then break it down based on those projects. And I mean, working for 4 years at an automotive company, you get to see how those timelines, Gantt charts, those milestones, and how setting up those dates are important, and how you to hold yourself accountable for those dates. Because you can't say, "Oh well, we didn't meet it," because then you're in big trouble. And putting that into the startup mindset and also a personal mindset has worked out for me. Still, there's a struggle. I feel like, people say like, well, you have your long terms and your short terms, and then you have your breakdown of your projects. Do you always follow them to the letter? And I'll tell people, no, honestly, it's so difficult because you have to be checking them daily and where you are. And just goal setting is a task of its own. People need to understand. And it's something that you need to keep at it every day. And like for myself, I have morning goals, afternoon goals, and night goals, because you kind of have to be hustling throughout the day. And then obviously midnight goals are kind of sleeping goals, hopefully for everybody. But that's how I ended up setting it up. And I'll be the first one to admit, I don't follow them all the time, or I drop the ball on my own goals. And then I look at my I don't even want to open my goals. I'm like, if I open them, I know I'm behind, and there's guilt going through. But you just have to keep at it. It's a habit. Sometimes you have to develop those habits. And I gotta be honest, I didn't have people to coach me or family members to shadow. So I kind of had to learn as I go and evolve. So for people who don't know how to do that, maybe start with a board, start with a piece of paper, maybe it's online software, and then do what works for you. If you're a visual learner or somebody who needs somebody to be telling like, dude, you're behind, or I know people who go down to the last minute, like this task should take me 2 hours, and then they do it, and then they put like, well, it actually took me 3 hours. Because the one thing that I learned is that there's a finite amount of time in the day, and so you gotta kind of put your time is a very valuable resource, and you gotta know how to use that time. So yeah, that's my take on that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with both of you guys. I know for me, I need to see, hear, do all of the things, right? So I take voice notes in my phone and go back and listen to them. I keep a journal that breaks down like what I need to do. So on one side, I just do like a mind dump and just dump it all down, get it all out of my head. And then I take that and then I switch it over to like a task list. And then I color code what's most important, what's least important. And then I kind of like cross out like what's probably not going to happen. And that just helps me like stay focused and try to stay on topic, because if I don't, then I'll start to feel like I'm a failure. And to avoid that, I allow myself like some flexibility time, or even like how Mario said, I'm really big on setting goals within time frames. So if I say, okay, Aleka, it's going to take you an hour to do this, I give myself 2 hours, really, just because I'm going to pick up my phone, somebody's going to call, those little things that kind of come and distract you, to give myself a little bit more flexibility. And I actually posted yesterday on Facebook, I was like, I am going to break this habit of procrastination, because that's exactly what I'll do. I'll do all the time, make all the notes, and then I'm like, oh, that's only going to take me 45 minutes. I'll do it tomorrow. And then 3 days later comes and I'm like rushing to get it done. So yeah, that flexibility piece, I want to just add on to that, being flexible with yourself as you figure out what your system's going to be, and then change it if you need to. So, this journal is from my Teal. This is the My Taught You journal. She doesn't have them right now, but she's launching a new line. But honestly, it's just like a blank. Like you can get a journal from anywhere. I like my lead because I'm just obsessed with the work that she does. But the big thing is like creating the system. So like I said, I do that one side where I just do a mind dump, and then the other side of going and like basically like drawing a line to what needs to be done is how I do it. And then again, allowing myself to be flexible, because if not, I'll give up, honestly. I'm that person where I'm like, I have too much to do. I didn't accomplish one task, throw the whole day away. So allowing myself some flexibility also helps in that process.
Aleka, I think it's amazing that we have a very similar process of like mind dumping, putting everything down, crossing things out, prioritizing, and then deciding what we're going to do. I was doing that earlier this week. I've got a whole bunch of stuff to do. And I was like, in order for me not to feel overwhelmed by everything I know I need to do, I just need to get this on paper so that I can feel that I'm on top of it, I'm on control of it. And another thing that I've learned over time, and it took me a while to figure this out, no one really taught me this either, Mario, kind of in the same boat, is that it's really easy to get distracted by the shiny new object. And so I might have a whole list of goals, but there's this other thing that just came up. Someone else is really excited about it. I got really excited about it, and I experienced incredible mission drift. And so just being aware that I have a little bit of a shiny object syndrome, and I can get really distracted. There are tons of great ideas, but I need to recognize and take responsibility for what I need to do, and just say no to a lot of things that are really great out there. And I can come back and just say, what's my mission, what's my vision, and what's my values? Go back to my MVV and say, what is it that I'm actually trying to accomplish here? Is this shiny new thing that is really cool the thing that I'm supposed to be doing next? And that helps me decide what I need to do and when I need to do it, or maybe if I need to say no to it at the get-go.
Aleka, you kind of talked about when you do that mind dump, you kind of highlight things that are you're prioritizing, right? So I mean,
yeah, absolutely. I think for me, the biggest thing is if I keep it in my head, it'll like literally never get done, or I'll forget if I did something and then like I'm repeating a task that I probably already did. So by giving myself, like, oh my God, here's this idea, here's this project that I need to do, write down everything I can think about on that project. And then going in and literally like, okay, this little scribble or something, make an actual task for it, and then listing out all of those things. And like I said, going back and color coding, like I'll use orange for like most important, yellow for this would be great. Honestly, if this is just too big for this particular time frame, I just put a cross through it and just say it's there. I can see it, but it's not going to be something I focus on. Another thing I actually do is in my other room, I have like post-it notes. And I write sticky notes, so like on a project that I'm working on specifically in this time. So like for instance, if I'm launching a new head wrap line or whatever, I'll write down on each different sticky note the task that I need to get done. And then as soon as it's done, I put it to the other side. So I can see in front of me, oh, this is what I still need to do. This is what's done. So like I said, I have almost 3 different processes. I leave notes in my phone. I go back and listen to the notes, do my mind dump. Then the next process, writing out that list. And the next process is putting it up on a board and literally seeing it. And that's the only way I'll stay focused. Because with running 3 different like mini businesses, there's no way to stay on top of all of that if you don't. So, and I take time to do that, like an hour or 2 at the beginning of the week. And then that way, as I go through the week, I can just check stuff off.
You know, something that I do want to add based on what Aleka and the Deavondre said is 2 things. The color coding helps a lot, and that's why I ended up choosing a specific software that does literally all that based on color coding, based on projects, and also talking about systems. Systems are very important to making things run smoothly. As for us, deliveries and manufacturing, and when deliveries come in, with the software that I ended up choosing, it literally kind of walks the process, almost automates, you know, hey, you got an order, you got to go take care of that, or hey, we're low on this, or you didn't accomplish this task. So I think all this comes together in many different forms, depending on who, you know, how comfortable you feel. Either are you more of a tactile person or more of a visual, you know, software looking at it person?
Yeah, that was really good, Mario. Thanks for sharing. I want to add on to what Aleka and Mario have shared so far. I'm such a big, I believe there's tactics for everything, but I think there's very few fundamentals and philosophies. And so I just want to share a few of those and they line up with what Mario said, they line up with Aleka and Paul. One of the first things is that Mario was saying it's about systems. I believe systems are everything. Again, the philosophy to me is that we are the sum of our habits, right? Our predicament is the sum of our activities. And so before you even set goals and people think about how do I set goals, I think the conversation needs to be, I need to study myself, right? Because what works for Aleka doesn't necessarily work for me, and her strength is not the same as mine. And so how we go about setting goals is going to be based on who we are and how our behaviors are set up right now, right? I had a conversation with my cousin. He's big into football, and people love to talk about Michael Jordan and LeBron and debate who's the best. And they have all of these key indicators of, the championship and, their percentage of a game shot winning, a winning game shot percentage, right? We need to have those key indicators of performance for ourselves, right? You need to study yourself in the idea of what do you do with your time for the last 6 months, right? On a weekly basis. What did you do with your money for the last 6 months? And that's going to inform your goals now, right? Because now, even if we're both going for $1 million, and I say $1 million because it's an easy number, if we're both going for $1 million and I'm retaining $100,000, right, every 6 months, and you're retaining, $500,000, how we go about getting to that goal is different, although we have the same. And so I'm trying to really hone into this idea that habits are where we start, because habits is the goal is going to be the sum of your habits, right? Not what you feel like on Wednesday, not what you feel like on a random Friday, but what you choose to do every single day. And one more thing I want to put onto that, once you study that, Aleka said this, once you decide to do once you decide to make a goal, you're effectively saying no to everything else you could possibly do. Paul was talking about this, right? So to me, there's this inherent knowledge that it's an opportunity cost for everything. So I'm on this panel right now. I'm saying no to any customer, client, colleague, any other possible phone call that comes in right now. And I think to make that work, something that worked for me, and maybe it doesn't work for you guys because your behaviors weren't set up the way mine is, but one thing that was very profound for me from Jim Rohn, again, guys, is that he talked about the idea that adults, we respond to the way our time management is set up is based on how close the result is. So for example, if you go work out the first day and you see nothing, you're like, oh man, I don't see anything. You work out a second day and then you kind of give up the second and third day, like I'm doing this work, I don't see anything. But if you can make the consequence, that's a long-term consequence, feel very immediate, you're going to keep that behavior, right? If you can continue to, however Aleka says she keeps it up on her mirror, Mario says he does it in systems. However, you can take a consequence of that goal and keep it fresh and real, right? So if every time you work out, every time you didn't work out, you feel guilty about it, try to make that guilt as close to you as possible so it can keep you motivated, right? And now we're talking about either you're motivated by fear or motivated by goal, right? Whichever one. But nevertheless, I think it comes from the study of self. So sorry about that. Just wanted to make sure we corral that.
I think that's a good point. So literally using that like workout as an example. So I started a training program in October. And I keep feeling like, oh, I haven't lost any weight. Nothing's changed. I'm wearing the same size clothes, whatever, right? And something my trainer says to me every week, Aleka, have you taken any progress pictures? And I'm like, well, I've taken 2. And he's like, so you've taken 2 progress pictures, but you've been in this program since October and it's February. You have no proof visually of the work that you've done. So if you I agree with you, if you take that like the workout mentality of progress pictures as you're working out, that same mentality through your goals, however you set goals. I've used Trello and learned very quickly that digital does not work for me. It needs to be visual in front of me. But when I travel, I'm not taking this board with me, so I use Trello. It's that I agree. It's having all of these different ways that work for you. But if you don't have some type of award system set up within yourself, setting goals is going to be for naught.
Something that's interesting that you guys mentioned was the when something is due. I going through college, they're like, oh, you have a report paper due tomorrow. I'm like, why didn't you do it more before? Kind of like you ask yourself that question. And I have found myself in that situation so many times, back and back, like, all right, well, time to do an all-nighter, and even with like startup work. And I keep regretting, like, how do I always keep getting to these situations? And the things that I've been doing to counteract, which I haven't perfected this. I'm still kind of like more of a reactor than anything. Is I try to set it like, all right, you need to start something, write something, and then it'll come to you. So I think that's a lot of students out there, a lot of young entrepreneurs are probably dealing with that. Is the procrastinating and leaving it for urgency to take over and for you to react So, yeah, wanted to mention that.
I think it's a great point that everybody's making. And part of it, if I were just to capture it, one thing that we try to help entrepreneurs understand it, because it can feel so overwhelming, or it can feel like there's so much to do, and you can wait for 2 days or do something and then not make any progress. But if you're trying to eat an elephant, you don't do it all in one bite. It's one bite at a time. And if you can just remember that the elephant is eaten one bite at a time, and then you're going to break it up into smaller pieces to be able to consume the elephant. Such a gross metaphor, but it just needs to happen one bite at a time. And so don't try to do it all at once, and then see the progress. And one way that I feel like it's a really great, easy way to see the process and the progress for yourself is by being able just to put it on paper and put it on calendar. Like, you got one big goal. I want to eat this elephant. And so I know I need to break it up into smaller pieces. And I need to do that in a 90-day goal, a 60-day goal, and a 30-day goal. And if we move it into the business sphere, like, I need to have a marketing plan made in 90 days. I know I need to do that. But I know that I just can't just create a marketing plan. I need to come up with sub goals on how that's going to look. Like, what's my message going to be? What are the channels that I'm going to use? Am I going to employ contract with somebody to do this, or am I going to do it all myself? So you break it up into smaller goals of what you need to do to have an overall marketing plan. And then you can break it up into weekly objectives. Like, I know that for month 3, I need to have these 4 weekly objectives. And then I'm going to put down for every single day, this is what I'm going to do on this day and time. And if you put out a 90-day plan like that, you can cross off every single day all of those tasks that you did, and you can see that elephant getting eaten over 90 days. And at the end, you've got it fully mapped out and actually accomplished. And so that's one way to do it. That's one way we teach. I know there's so many different ways. You guys have talked about your own systems or process for it, but I would say keep it simple and keep it visual so that you can actually see your progress that you're making.
And I think, Paul, when you and I were talking, we were even talking about taking a day to actually just plan. So, like, you've got goals for every day, and maybe somewhere within that month or somewhere within that week, even, you set aside some time to evaluate your plan, to evaluate your goals, evaluate where you are in that process. And maybe you have to shift things a little bit. Maybe things have changed a little bit, it's okay to, it's things come up, things change. Then you have to adjust your plan.
Go ahead. Sorry to cut you off.
Here's something else I kind of want to address too is, how do you know the goal that you've set in the time frame that you've set is achievable or not? How do you not give yourself such a lofty goal that you're setting yourself up to not succeed because it's not necessarily achievable? And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean being realistic about your goals, I guess, is what I'm saying. How are you realistic?
I think from my point of view, I think for Soldadera, it usually kind of is based on an estimate based on what we have seen in the past, and then we kind of readjust as we go, as we contact suppliers and we get lead times, and then based on our past experience on, let's say, manufacturing or developing something, it's like, well, it usually took us about 2 weeks. Let's add 20% of that time on top of that, and let's say that's the timeline. I mean, honestly, when you see corporations and how they do it, it's really a rough estimate. I mean, they don't even know, the actual timelines, and all the time. And I'm gonna give you, I've been in so many board meetings, and they never meet those timelines. Like, hey, something always comes up. There's always, Murphy's Law. It always happens, and so you have to give yourself a wiggle room time always, because the world is very unexpected. Like, nobody expected coronavirus, and now we're giving ourselves a year of wiggle time, So that's how I think you should proceed it. You shouldn't feel like you have to hone it into it in the exact moment. It's a moving variable, but don't move it so much that it's gonna be so long too, because then it defeats the purpose.
So thanks for sharing that, Mario. I agree that there's a lot of times corporations don't stick to their timelines. I thought that was very entertaining. Again, I'm going to share what works for me. If it works for you, if it sounds familiar, please do capture that for yourself. So there's two things I do to make goals realistic. In the first, setting the goal, I don't think realistically. For setting the actual goal, in my mind, it's not about what's achievable, what's not achievable. The goal is, what do you need and or want, period. I write those things down, and then I pick the two that excite me, that every single day, if I'm thinking about this when I wake up, I'm going to go. So then how do I make it achievable is then my team knows this. When you're working in DanceSpire, there's 3 departments. You're either growing the business, maintaining the business, or you're servicing the business, right? We're very clear about what activity you're doing to help. So when I'm goal setting, there's 2 things that's happening when you're goal setting, especially in coronavirus, because this is a very relatable time. You have to maintain what you already have while trying to struggle to grow something new. Right? It's very idealistic to think you could do one or the other, right? If you only maintain, you're not going to grow, you're going to die. If you only pay attention to growth, you're going to lose what you have and you're going to die. So I take the unrealistic goal and I literally, like Paul said and Aleka said, I go through my calendar and I say, okay, cool. Here's how much time I'm spending doing what I need to maintain things. I'm a dad at, I'm this is when I spend time with my son. This is when I'm with my business, blah, blah, blah. And I look at all the free time now. Like, okay, that's how much time it's going to take me to maintain what I'm doing. Now, based on my unrealistic goal, let me start putting in time markers to start filling up this time that I don't have, or time that I have a little bit of flexibility, to start putting one activity on Monday, one activity on a Wednesday, one activity on a Friday. So the timeline is what makes it realistic for me, not necessarily the actual goal, because the goal is I need it to be big. I want to go rocket ship to Mars, like, Elon, when it comes to goal setting. But as far as the implementation, it's the timeline and the divvying of the elephant, the way Paul put it, the splitting of the pizza into 8 points, which then makes it realistic. Eating a pizza by itself, oh my God, I can't do it. I'm too small. No, this is crazy. You're unrealistic. But then splitting into 8 pieces, I can do that.
I absolutely agree with Deavondre. And also I think about what like Mario said earlier. One of the things that I like to do is, yes, like that, throw it all out there, make it big. But for me, what I've learned before any of that worked, I had to do a time study on myself. I had to literally, almost like how you track what you eat when you're on like a workout plan or regimen, I literally was tracking my time. So throughout the day, and I just used like a notes in my phone, and I was like, okay, I'm doing this at this time, I'm doing this at that time, and looking and seeing how I'm spending my 24 hours. And then that helped me be able to say, okay, Aleka, you're wasting a lot of time in this area. One thing that I've been working with my brother on, because like we're each other's like cheerleaders and also like get it together, get over yourself person. But one thing that he and I started doing was literally like putting a time to tasks that we had going on. And that way it allowed us to be able to say, okay, I only have 20 minutes to focus on this specific goal, whether it's reading a chapter in a book because I want to continue to keep learning, whether it's having leisure time on the phone with a friend or watching television, whatever these things that I want to do, I'm only setting a certain amount of time for and then moving on to the next task. And then at the end of me kind of doing that time study, it let me see, okay, no, I need a little bit more time in this area and a little less time in that area. So I totally agree. Like I said, with what Mario said earlier, with really understanding who you are as an individual and then doing that personal time study first.
If you guys don't mind, I think Paul works with a lot of entrepreneurs, so I would love to ask a question to bring more value. Paul, I'm very curious of what's been a great example and a worst case example of entrepreneur in you guys' program of setting and executing a goal, and probably sharing why you think that was a good and bad example or worst case example.
I think the worst case example of setting a goal is just those that don't learn from having set a goal and trying to accomplish it. I mean, if you set a goal and you get distracted really easily and you don't ever achieve it, I mean, and you don't learn from it, that's the most unfortunate case, I think. And that's where I think we're going to see a repetition of failure, where someone will want to achieve something. It might be realistic, it might be unrealistic, but then, and it's okay to fail at not achieving a goal. There's a whole bunch of reasons why that might happen. There are life situations that come up. There's family needs. You might have to take care of your mental health. There could be business demands that were unexpected, both good and bad. And you're just going to have to put your goal on pause. You're going to have to readjust, recalibrate. That's okay. But if you don't ask yourself thoughtful questions about why that goal wasn't achieved, and is there something that I could own about that process for why it didn't happen? I think, and asking yourself also, was it within my control? Was it outside of my control? And if it was in my control, or 20% of it was within my control, what could I do differently next time that would help me to achieve that goal? I think that's the real success and failure point of goal achieving, is whether or not you can be honest about how you were successful or why you failed. And so those people that achieve their goal are those that are constantly working at improving that whole process, because your past success is not going to determine future success, and your past failure does not need to determine your future failure either. It's about your reflectiveness and your ability to make adjustments, and then be honest with yourself about what adjustments you need to make, and then move forward. So I don't have any that, I mean, sharing too much would be sharing somebody's own personal story. So I want to just be general enough, but I think it's really important to be honest with yourself. And that's part of the maturity too for a business person is, and we see people mature physically, right? And we say, man, that person over there, they really haven't matured in their character. They've never really grown up. They're a boy, they're a 60-year-old boy. There's also the possibility that as an entrepreneur, you can never really grow out of the hustle stage where you're making things happen, you're working, you're the technician in your business, but you really haven't grown into the business person. And being honest with yourself about how well you're achieving the goals that you are setting out to achieve is part of that maturity from the initial entrepreneur hustler stage into that business person that's going to be working on your business and developing something that's sustainable, repeatable, and can scale up into the actual dream that you're trying to achieve. Hope that was helpful.
Yeah, that was really helpful. And if I could just add to that, I think it's true. I mean, we at SpringGR, we talk to a lot of entrepreneurs as well. And I think, when you have this idea to start a business, obviously, you're looking at down the road. You want to be successful. And, some people are really good at being realistic about what that vision is, and how to get there, and working with, all the different steps that we're talking about today. And then some people, they visualize the success, but they don't want to really hone in on those steps. And they don't want to hone in on, all the grunt work it takes to get there, and all the pivoting and all that. And so, and I think those people get frustrated. They start a business, it doesn't do what they think it's going to do in a short period of time, and then they're done. And maybe people like that are not meant to be entrepreneurs. If you can't, be realistic with yourself, realistic with what it's going to take to get there, then I think maybe it might not be the right thing for you.
I think to add to that is, failure is important for entrepreneurs. I myself have had many failures in past projects, and even and I think with those failures is how I was able to understand that you may be a startup, but you also have to think as a business. Because at the end of the day, your startup will turn into a business. I mean, every little startup's big dream is a corporate company, and nobody wants to say it. Nobody wants to agree. Say yeah, you want to be a corporate company, but that's the reality. And through my failures, I got to see how the lack of planning, the lack of steps, the lack of organization and systems, end up kind of backfiring, and they don't allow you to be successful. From hardware to people businesses, I got to learn that, and I think that's part of the. If you want to be an entrepreneur, is part of the path. If you haven't failed yet, then that I will be worried, because I'm like, well, have you dealt with that feeling that, like, darn it, we gotta shut it down, or we got customers and we got money, but we weren't able to deliver our products. Like, all those things, it's a journey. It's a journey in itself, and some people don't like that journey because it's very uncomfortable for them. Or some people are just a glutton for punishment and they just want to keep going. Like, well, we can do it different, or maybe we'll change it up a little bit here and there. And it's it depends on the person, but at the end of the day, I feel like a true entrepreneur perseveres, but the key is you want to persevere while learning your mistakes. And that's the key, because anybody can persevere. I mean, give me $1 million and I can start 10 different companies, but all of those are going to fail. It's based on the learning. So, yeah.
One of the things I think is huge when setting yourself up for success is having either some type of coach or mentor. And I know for me, like I've had A.C.T. PhotoMedia for years, and then I did I did SpringGR to help me with my head wrap business. And people kept asking, like, you've done this before, why are you going through SpringGR? And for me, I was like, well, number one, it's a completely different business. Like these two businesses, although they can work together, don't necessarily have anything to do with each other. So going through a program like SpringGR is going to open up my eyes to information, to data, to concepts, to strategies, to systems that I was not aware of in my photography business. And then in addition to that, for me is one, I got an opportunity to win money towards my business. So great, I was able to pitch and win first place. But then from there, I was able to take all of the knowledge that I got through this program and connect to mentors afterwards. And sometimes it's literally like a mentor who is going to give me certain type of structure and information to move forward. But then there's also the coaches who just literally came alongside through my 30, 60, and 90-day goals and just kind of gave input. Didn't tell me what to do, didn't do much, but really just kind of stand with me as I figured it out, and then kind of gave insight. But then like the mentor kind of pushed in certain areas. So for me, I think that's one of the things too, is in like, we do the goal setting, we make the big plans, we do all that, but if we don't have some type of accountability with someone who's either a step above us or a little further along than us, then we're almost setting ourselves up for failure.
Thank you for sharing that, Aleka. I actually have a question for you. I know I have some friends watching, and this is something I've thought about before, and it's an area of ignorance for mine, so I would love to hear you answer this question. I think, I believe that women have a greater source of criticism coming from externally. So I think that entrepreneurship could be even more heavy on them. And I'm curious on you as a woman who's starting businesses, who has to deal with, all the things that come with being a woman. How do you deal with all of those different pressures and deal with the uncertainty of like entrepreneurship and things like that?
Number one, I'm big on therapy. So I have a therapist who helps with all facets of life, right? Personally, professionally, all of those things. And then I have an amazing circle of friends. And this is huge for every entrepreneur. My circle of friends are not my clients. I have had a small group of my friends who have purchased my products, head wraps, or have used my service as photography. That is never an expectation. And I realized, like, all of these people are in my corner to be like, Aleka, you're great. Aleka, you're dope. Oh no, that's a terrible idea. I don't like that. Like whatever, the good noise that you need to hear, even when it's like criticism. So for me, it's number one, I have a therapist. I believe in therapy. I think it's necessary. Can't say enough. Therapy. And then two, yes, the people that I surround myself around to keep me like going. Because I honestly did not consider myself an entrepreneur. I still have a struggle with that because up until recently, I had a full-time job. So I'm like, everything that I do as an entrepreneur, so to speak, is like my passion project. So like, yes, I've had a photography business for a long time. That's just an addition to, right? Oh, I love head wraps. I already offered a service through A.C.T, so why not just go head wrap? Kind of like, those were all fun things. So for me now, switching from, well, I'm full-time employed and get to do these things, to shifting to, this is all I'm going to do, at least in this season. Yeah, just that surrounding of people. And then again, going back to, like I said, connecting to organizations. Like I've been a part of what Start Garden has to offer. I'm able to apply for the 100 ideas and then take on some of those connections and mentorships that come from that. Being with SpringGR, signing up for the SBDC. I have a coach for them. Like I have so many coaches in my corner, and all of them like give me the information that I need to move forward, but also be cautious of that, depending on the type of person you are. Like if you're one of those people who gets too much information, then you'll stop and won't keep moving. I was very strategic in, I want to go through SpringGR for my head wrap business, right? They helped me focus in on that area. And then I have an SBDC coach that focuses specifically on my head wrap business. And then I have, like I said, my friends in my corner who are in the background, like, Aleka, you're dope. Aleka, you're great. All of those things to keep me encouraged. But then when reality hits and I get a customer who doesn't like something, or I have to reshoot something for a client, all the things that make you want to be like, is this what I'm supposed to do? Am I talented enough? Am I good enough? All of those things. Then I go to therapy and work it out in therapy. So
I want to add something that Aleka said that's for her has been very important about her friends and her circle. Working in it, because I was part-time with Soldadera, and I want to say that close friends wise, it was, I would say, one entrepreneur, very close entrepreneurship friend, and then everybody else was corporate type of friend. And when you have people who are, I guess, don't see what you're trying to do, you're gonna have a lot of people dragging you down. Like, oh, why have you been doing that? Or like, are you even sure? Did you think about your family? Like, it's all these little voices, and a lot of people just either give up or they just can't handle. I mean, it's a lot of criticism, and it's sometimes it's because they want you to succeed in life. That doesn't mean they want you to succeed in your business, and so sometimes people project their own internal worries because I would never do something like that, or I would never do this, or why do you want to leave when you have a great corporate job here? And all those insecurities do add up. I mean, I wish I kind of could get a therapist, but sometimes you gotta talk to yourself. That's my, why are they trying to do this? Why do they make you feel bad when you talk to them? And you kind of, as an entrepreneur, you gotta know when to switch out or who do you need to talk to. And that's where I feel mentors come in. Where you get to be around people like yourself who feel passionate about the thing, similar things about yourself. Because entrepreneurship, it's a lifestyle as well, not just something that you do. And it's completely different than working from a corporation. There's nothing wrong with working at a company. It works for some people, and sometimes it just doesn't feel right for others. So your circle of friends is very important, and your mentors are very important because they'll point out things that you're like, oh shoot, I didn't point out. Like one good example, Laurie helped me out with this, connecting with this fellow from Big Joe's. He literally pointed out like sales, like you're not doing sales, and as harsh as he was, which I love when people are harsh with me, I'm like, he's right. Like,
yeah.
I haven't had that. Nobody has told me this. And he just came out and told me, like, that's your issue. Like you need to just switch gears and go. So mentors are important. Your circle of friends are important as well, and who you're connecting with. And what I ended up doing is I get different energies, I call them, or kind of like from different people. It's like if I want to, just go and chill with a couple of friends and just talk about dumb stuff, then we have that group. But if we want to do that and talk about how do we get a farm in Mars, I'll have that group of friends too. And so you can go back and forth. Doesn't mean you have to like, oh, I can't talk to my friends who work in companies. No. It's just you gotta know when to switch out. And sometimes don't take it too deep because sometimes people put their own insecurities onto you. You need to realize that.
So one, Aleka, thanks for answering that question. Mario, thanks for going into great detail. I wanted to possibly highlight, it seems like a very reoccurring thing, that entrepreneurship has everything to do with you, right? And not in the sense of like you're a terrible person, so you're going to have a terrible business, but in the sense of you because you're going against the grain, right? Because your schedule is crazy, right? Because you have this, you are insane, right? In my mind, when you're an entrepreneur, you have a vision that is not yet realized, so technically you're insane. Right? That's just how it is. And so you're trying to actualize it. So you're going against the grain. So you have to become more conscious of what am I giving my energy and time to, period. Right? So when Aleka said my friends, she's referring to, it's not that her friends are terrible people, even if they didn't support her business. She's just deciding that I'm not going to give my energy and time to get going down my friend's throat if they don't purchase a piece of my product, because that's not suitable for the success of the company, right? Mario's talking about mentors. It's not that you have bad mentors if they're not, giving you the right information. It's just that how are you using your time? How are you using your time and your energy to try to attract or get the mentors that you feel like you need, right? And so I just wanted to like highlight that, right? And you know, she talked about therapy as well. It has everything to do with, we talked about opportunity cost. Paul brought this up. Once you do something, you're saying no to 99 million other thousand things, right? And so whatever you're giving your time to, you have to understand you're also doing that, right? You're giving your energy to those things. And as an entrepreneur, you just don't have the luxury to like, you know, give your time and energy to something and then think that that's not going to affect you in your next move or your next meeting or your next journey. So you have to be very strategic about where your goals are, what that vision is, and become way more reserved and conservative about how you dish out your time and energy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it was really brilliant. What you've done, Aleka, is you really looked at yourself and said, what do I need? You're very self-aware, and you've kind of, it sounds like you have a mental map of what Aleka needs to thrive and survive. Same with you, Mario, and Deavondre too. And that is such a critical part of being an entrepreneur, is knowing where you're at, what you're struggling with. Just like your business needs a plan, you need a plan of sorts, and you need support. Your business needs finances, it needs a business plan, it needs marketing, all these things. You need certain things in order to be able to continue doing the hard work of realizing this thing that has not yet come to fruition, like Deavondre was saying.
Mm-hmm. I think something I was thinking about, something I learned in SpringGR, just like from the financial standpoint, and like it translates to a person. I know when I started my head wrap business, I was with my coach, I was like, oh, I'm not paying myself. I don't care about paying myself. It's all about 100% everything going back into the business. And my coach was like, I'm going to challenge you on that. She's like, even if it's only 5% of your profit, like it can be the smallest number, but putting a value, a financial value on the work that you're doing. To me, that's the same energy and like the mental side of it, right? Because like I said, if I'm dealing with a client who doesn't like the service that I provided and have to correct that, like, at least for me as an individual, I'm not even gonna say necessarily as a woman, but for me as an individual, I will internalize that very quickly. I learned very early on, which is why I think I did not want to consider myself an entrepreneur, because I didn't want to take on that burden of like, oh, I messed up, now I have to correct with my client. Because at work, you get to be like, oh, I messed up, go talk to the manager, right? Oh, I messed up, go deal with my supervisor. But when it's all on you, you have to fix all of that until you get to the level where you can hire managers and assistants and all of that. But I think it's literally that, like assigning a dollar amount to the work that you're doing actually, and then also assigning like mental space to say, okay, I can't today. Like I literally can't. I'm gonna take a day, literally, and just like veg out on some movies. Or people who actually, like, I don't have children, so I get the luxury of just hanging out with myself. But I'm just gonna spend the day with my kid and just laugh with them and have a good, have a good time to like separate myself from all the stress of what the business does. Because even like what Paul said, like if you don't have a good like self-awareness of what's going on, you will burn out. And like Deavondre said earlier too, like, which is why people aren't successful over a period of time, right? Or like even Mario said that, like you keep starting a business and stopping, or you keep this and then it doesn't go anywhere because you didn't take enough time to say, where am I mentally? Where am I as an individual first, so that I can continue to move forward?
I think what's really interesting too is, we've talked about risk, so being an entrepreneur is taking a risk. You're trying to achieve something. A lot of times entrepreneurs feel like they're out there on their own. You're all talking about how you relate with mentors and network with other entrepreneurs, but ultimately I think everybody who's starting a business feels like it's all on your shoulders. So when you're when you're trying to compartmentalize, like Alicia or Aleka, you're talking about, you need some time for yourself, because that's important. You need to prioritize that as well as prioritize your business. But there's this pressure that, if you're employed by somebody else, you go to your job, you have your tasks that you have to accomplish, but you're accomplishing those primarily for someone else and for someone else's business. When it's your own business, you're responsible for setting up what those goals are, setting up what those tasks are. And so you've got that burden of that and the stress of that, but you also have to realize that you do have to take time for yourself. So, and I guess it all kind of comes around to, and I was listening to Mario talk about all those little voices, you're over here, you're saying to yourself, I've got to do this for the business. Then you're listening to somebody else say, why are you doing this? And, then there's a lot. It's just a lot that goes into being an entrepreneur that not everybody realizes, the type of, whether it's self-imposed or imposed by friends and family saying, what are you doing?
I know we only have a few minutes left, Laurie, but I wanted to add to that. I think we really got into the idea of like, there's a lot of pressure and you really need to think those things through. If I could try to end us on a more positive note, I wanted to share that I think that, I know, right? I think at the end of the day, and Paul said this, right? He said, in his case, seeing so many entrepreneurs, it's really not about the success or the failure. It's about the reflection in the journey, right? And so I think that to reflect, you have to make a decision. So at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of things to do, but that entrepreneur needs to remind themselves that you need to make a decision and be confident with your decision, right? Not confident that it's going to succeed or fail, right? Like there's a likelihood we can all make a bet on that decision, but you need to get to a place where it's your decision at the end of the day. You make the call. Nobody can press the button until you press it. And once you stop being, because I think a lot of the times when we make decisions, we automatically pair it with the consequence of that decision. What if I fail, right? What if I succeed, right? But really it's just a decision. And if you get in the habit, again, because we're all about habits of decision making, you become less, you start to separate the consequence and the decision. And you look at it more analytically instead of Aleka said how you internalize that, right? I have a 4-year-old. I tell my son all the time, right? We're working on potty training, right? And I have to remind myself as an adult that, that's the action. The action is an unfortunate action that we both don't want here, right? But that doesn't make him a bad kid. So we have to separate, right? The action and the consequence. And as an entrepreneur, I think if you do that and you focus on making decisions and just trying to make that decision faster, more accurately each time, you won't feel like, oh my God, the world is going to fall apart when I'm done, right? And so again, I just wanted to bring it back to decision making and being comfortable with the reflection of that decision making.
That's a great point.
Yeah, that's great.
Yep.
We do only have a couple minutes, so I'd love each one of you to kind of say maybe like a parting thought. And as Deavondre pointed out, let's end this on a positive note. Let's inspire people to be entrepreneurs. Aleka.
I think on a positive note, I think the biggest thing is to just keep going. And sometimes that seems like a simple task, but like continuing in something, like you say, you're setting out a goal, you're setting out a task that you're going to do for yourself, keep going. And then if you drop the ball, pick it back up and keep going.
I think for all the people who are out there who, are thinking to do entrepreneurship, there are lights at the end of the tunnel, but it's like Deavondre said, it's a journey, and it's a beautiful journey because it gives you a different perspective in life. And I believe it makes you a better person in terms of how do you treat other people as well. And in the people around you kind of come along to that journey. And it's something that like my 10-year-old, we talk about like, hey, let's go work at the coffee shop, let's go make some coffee. And so you make impacts on other people's lives without you even realizing it, and people look up to you if it's your friends or your children, and like, wow, they do hustle. And they, like, as I saw my migrant parents work hard to get where they got, my kids can see what I'm doing to get where I'm trying to go. And it's you're going against the grain, but it's a beautiful journey, and I recommend it. It's not easy, but it's a beautiful journey. And so, yeah.
I would say go, planning, goal setting, entrepreneurship, it's all hard, but have somebody on the journey with you. Don't do this alone, because you can celebrate it with people that are on the journey. They can help ask great questions. They can help support you along the way, provide resources or connections. So don't go it alone. And when you do succeed or you learn something from a failure, celebrate it with somebody, because I think that's part of the joy of the journey.
We talked about self-awareness a lot, and I think if there's one thing I like, this is the thing I live by. And so again, if it works for you, it works. If it doesn't, that's okay. I learned a principle early on back when I was reading in college. It said, try to be more interested than interesting. And what it told me is basically when you're having conversation, you're going to get more out of the conversation when you're asking questions. And I've become a very great question asker. Paul will tell you, I will pick up the phone immediately and ask him questions. Every time I talk to Laurie, I'm asking questions because that is how we become more self-aware. When we talked about being self-aware, you're asking yourself questions. When you are talking to a mentor, how do you get answers? You ask them questions. And I think everybody thinks as an entrepreneur or any job, honestly, we have to have the answers. You can always run out of answers. You can't run out of questions, right? There's so many questions, right? And so if you become very comfortable with your own ignorance and asking questions, I think you will get a lot of the information that you're seeking.
That's great.
So
I want to
true.
make another point. It's right sequence, like literally. So if you set a goal to sell like 2 things and you sold those 2 things like as a first time entrepreneur, celebrate those small wins.
Mario, did you have something you wanted to say?
No, I was just agreeing with the Deavondre. You know, admit your ignorance because you don't know everything. So yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here this morning. I really appreciate it. I know everybody's really busy, and to take this time to have this conversation, I think is really important. And so hopefully for people who are watching and listening and might look at this later, they learn a little bit of something and they can, see a little bit of themselves in each one of you guys. So you're very inspiring. Thank you very much for being here this morning.
Thank you for
It was a
having
pleasure. Thanks so
Thank you.
much.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
thank you so much.
Bye.